Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Absolute Candor. This time we are reviewing The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 4, Day 1. Now, this, for me, going to come in hot with this one, Mike. This is my favourite episode of the season so far.
Cool.
I absolutely love this episode. I think it had a fantastic balance of key moments from the show. The Ellie on the guitar in the music store was ripped straight from the game. Pitch perfect, beautifully played, and really well written. We got so much more time with Isaac, getting into deep with his character, opening the episode, I think, with that great flashback from him establishing his role. Really effective, and then seeing, obviously, the downward spiral of his character and how morally grey he becomes. But right through to just that whole sequence in the train station. We had the news station as well, so quite a bit of Seattle Day 1 from the game. It's structured like that. It goes Seattle Day 1, 2, 3. And so much of that was very condensed. We got a lot from that packed into that episode. So the TV station, it was the whole bit that was lifted from that. Really, really tense. And then going down into that, I love the tendrils detecting the flare as well. I know I'm bouncing around all over the place, but that's just because I'm coming in hype from this episode. I thought this was outstanding. It balanced both being faithful to the source material, making original choices, and delivering some really, really nice twists on the familiar. So the big one that I wanted to mention here is the bite. Is Ellie sort of putting her arm in front of that that runner to try and block Dina and taking the bite. In the game, there's a moment much earlier on where she gets exposed to spores, and of course Dina in that world in the game thinks that she's tries to give her a gas mask, and Eddie tries to stop her. But without spores being in this version of The Last of Us, it had to be something a bit more physicalized, and I actually think it worked better. I think this is an instance where the show did something that was more impactful than the game. I've bounced around a lot. I've just given you probably like 8 highlights. Not great for structure, but I think hopefully that speaks to just my excitement coming off of this episode. I think this was the most fully realized and complete package, and I feel like they also addressed a lot of my earlier criticisms from previous episodes around the writing. This one was absolutely top on my list for me so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely really enjoyed it. I think possibly having not played the second game, it's less impactful. The plot of the episode was good, but it wasn't like, oh my god, that was amazing. I think just because obviously it was referencing the game, and it's the guitar, like the music shop was really cool. It was obviously a really nice set, but doesn't land the same as if you've played the game. Obviously, you're like in The Walking Dead, which I know we don't want to mention other shows too much, but in The Walking Dead, all the instruments would have been taken out of that shop.
Yeah.
All the so you're kind of questioning stuff like that rather than thinking about, oh, isn't it cool that they're referencing the bit in the game?
Sure, that's fair.
Just when they got to the subway, I was thinking there needs to be some infected or some action happening here, because it was, I was starting to be concerned that it was going to be like episode 3 where there wasn't a lot of action that happened in it. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but probably one episode after the other where there's not where there's no infected, you start to, the whole point of the show is that it's set in that universe. So it was really good, and that whole bit, like escaping into the subway and then having to deal with that was really well done. And I love subways as a setting for
definitely
films. It always works.
It felt really claustrophobic. I don't know whether that was I think it was a combination of elements. The fact that the lighting was so restricted, it was just those red flares, which again is a visual cue from the game, but executed really well in live action here. I love the camera work, going in really tight, playing it from the front. We see them running towards you with all of the infected trying to burst in through the windows. That was a unique sequence. We hadn't seen that before, and I just think that steady ratcheting of the tension in that moment just worked brilliantly. It really, really got me. That whole sequence worked fantastically well, and I really liked them. They've done some really nice evoking of game mechanics again in this episode. So Dina counting the number of the individualized clicker sounds.
Yeah, that's so good, because we obviously got that. I don't know if it's in episode 1 or 2.
I think it's 1, where she's outside. She's outside the building. She's listening.
Nice. And Ellie, Ellie was kind of doing it then as well, but
Mm.
in this one you really get to see that it's kind of Dina's speciality is that she's really good at picking how many
Differentiating the sound, yeah.
there are.
And I think just also the the way they were moving, the way they choreographed of the movement for the actors, that they were doing the crouch walk, and that was really nice to see. And that great Ellie's great takedown that I think should have been difficult, and I'm glad it was. It wasn't a comfortable takedown on that guy that tries to burst in.
It kind of evoked when she was training. Again, I think episode 1 maybe it was like the exact same move where she was kind of practicing in back at the settlement. Yeah,
Nice. I hadn't actually made that connection until you said that. That's a really good point. With Jessie, she's training with Jessie in the barn. Yeah, and it's the exact wrap around the head move. You're absolutely right. That's a good reference there. That's a nice callback for sure.
Talking about the game mechanics when they're in the tube train and like Ellie fires at a few of the infected, it just really makes me think of like QuickTime events or something.
Yeah, totally. Had to hit square to get that headshot, you know.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think also just off the back of episode 3, where one of my criticisms was around just a couple of sort of maybe unfinished or sort of shots that felt a little bit unpolished. I thought the production value here was pretty much flawless. I loved the tank and the street shots that we got early on in the episode, where there's that brief, very tense moment where Ellie accidentally flings open the lid of the tank with the bodies inside, and it creates that horrible echo. With some lovely building tension, and I do think you're right. I think it would have been a huge misstep not to have had the infected in this episode, especially with all those hints of them lurking around. I just think
I had a couple of
I
was just going to say on that note, I had a couple of bits where, similar to the previous episode, they had, for me, some stuff that was too close to the camera that was CGI that I would have preferred they'd have had a physical set item. There was a sign, not sure if it was just before they went into the subway or just before they went into the TV station, but yeah, there was like a sign that looked like either it had a filter on it to make it look like it was older than it was, or there was something about it that was not quite right. And around the tank, there were just some bits in the foreground, but like overall, I get that it's extremely difficult to do what they're trying to do and have it be flawless. So overall, it was really well done.
Really, really nice. I think like you say, on balance. The music store set with that blown open wall behind it with the moss growing in, definitely evoking some of the key art and visuals from the game, and they such a faithful recreation. Even right down to the way that the news station was designed, that Seattle news station, just that is a straight lift from the game, and they've done a really great job of evoking that in a way that, for a fan of someone who's played it, that felt really satisfying. That didn't take me out at all. That actually immersed me really into the episode, and it was great to see. Switching gears now to
scars.
Go on.
With the scars in the TV station in the game, had they just? Is that literally how it played out?
Yeah, exactly. Where you had the some of the wolves hanging. You had the wolves hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah.
Scars had taken over the station. In this case, obviously, the wolves, that squad comes in to try and clear the station out. Fun to hear their dialogue. I thought that was really well written. Them just saying, "Oh, fuck Isaac's orders. You know, we need to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
And we just sweep this place and go." Absolutely loved, having not enjoyed at all Abby's monologue in the second episode. I thought Isaac's monologue about the saucepans, about him wanting them, aspiring to have ones that are of a particular quality and type, and that now the great irony is he's using them to torture. I thought that was a fantastic piece of writing, and shout out to Jeffrey Wright. I wanted to get into the performances in this episode. My kind of two standouts here were Jeffrey Wright as Isaac, returning from Last of Us Part 2, getting to flesh out that character so much more than he did in the game. Brilliantly played in that scene. I really like the payoff of that young guy, the one kid that he pulls out the truck, the young soldier before grenading them all. And we cut to him outside going, yeah, he got what he deserved. And I loved seeing that was a nice little mini arc of that character's downfall that connected really nicely to the cold open. But Jeffrey Wright was just I don't know whether it's the guy's voice or something. I just think he's terrifying. It was great. But my MVP again, shout out to Isabella Merced as Dina. I thought she was awesome in this episode, playing so many different layers, like the the realization that she might have to shoot Ellie. I thought that was a really well handled moment. That sudden shift when they got out over the adrenaline of the escape and they see the theater, the sudden shift in her behavior was again a very unique moment for the show, and I think played out really nicely. Having their relationship be consummated at the time where the pregnancy is revealed was also a really interesting flip. And the big thing for me, actually, that I think they handled really well was they didn't blow past the reveal of Ellie finally admitting that she's immune. They let that scene went on a little longer than I thought it was going to, and I think that's actually for its benefit. We stuck with that scene before Ellie fell asleep, before the, when she suddenly wakes up, and there's that brief, that great shot with Dina holding the torch, so you can't quite see her reactions. It just keeps cutting to Ellie. Very well staged, and I thought that was just a really tidy way of handling something that was quite a complex, quite a layered scene. It just worked really well. These beats just hit for me in this one.
There are a couple of really nice bits of I guess you call it direction like that, like the torture scene where you don't see that he's torturing the guy.
Yes.
It looks like initially you think he's cooking, and then you can tell by what he's saying that he's obviously he's either like talking to some mice on the floor, or there's a guy he's torturing. But
he's either Ratatouille or he's
and then it's quite stark because the guy is completely naked, which is probably a bit of a shock for like TV audience, which does a good job of kind of, I think, ratcheting up the intensity of that scene.
And you sit in it, don't you? You feel so uncomfortable in that moment because he's obviously physically exposed, but you can tell that there's genuine vulnerability there. And I think actually this is the kind of like development with the Scars and WLF. I think they've cemented their rivalry really well now, in a sense of, we only really just saw the brutality in the last episode. I think this cemented the fact that they broke the truce and then they broke it back, and this has been a back and forth. It established a nice history between the two sides, which is where that bitterness from Isaac came through. And I thought, again, Jeffrey Wright played brilliantly in this episode.
Yeah, and it referenced the Scars killing children as well, because I think from the previous episode we were just like, oh, the wolves are killing the Scar children. That's terrible. We're on the Scar side, and now it's like they basically as bad as each other, pretty much.
And that's really important because they, I think, represent a kind of parallel between Ellie and Abby. How it's them sort of that, it's when does that cycle of violence get broken? It just goes on and on and on. And the wolves and the Scars are kind of the grander scale of what we're seeing from Ellie and Abby's relationship. Abby's absence actually is playing well for me too. I think her not being in it at this point. I think her not being in it at this point is really a really smart choice, because it's building up, I think, for her return. It will give her return a real impact, because it will be like sort of, oh yeah, there's the one that took Joel out, and it will give it that weight that it needs, I think, and that's really important. Particularly if my prediction about season 3 turns out to be true, is that we get the Abby perspective in that season, so we're going to get a lot more of Caitlin Dever then. But just shout out to Isabella Merced as Dina. I thought playing a really tough role, to be sort of slightly, not sarcastic, I think that's oversimplified, but like a little bit sort of like, she's got wit. She's got quite a sharp wit as a character, and then also having to play the physical act, doing the action, the physicality of that, and the emotion as well. I think it's a lot of layers to what she's having to do in that character. There's a lot of heavy lifting being done by her, and
she obviously went through the character went through the ringer in this episode, like you said, full range of emotions, and I think she's obviously her character is very laid back, in a way that she's very laid back in a way that is quite hard to, I think, for her to communicate, given that we know Ellie's immune, so you can understand why she's a bit more laid back with the infected. So the fact that Dean is able to pull that off and it not be just like, oh, this, because actually I find myself relating isn't the right word, but I feel like Dina is more believable the way that she sells the I'm laid back and I just like fighting infected and stuff, compared to how Ellie does it, even though Ellie's immune, and you can kind of, there's logic to why she's so laid back with them. I don't know quite what it is, but I do find, I think we mentioned it in a previous episode, there's still a bit for me of I don't feel like I have the backstory to like when they looked at each other when I think Dina said, what do we do if we see other wolves that aren't
Mm.
that weren't in that party?" And they just look at each other and it's like, well, basically just kill them. Um, and that's I struggle with that a bit because I don't know Dina's backstory to know why she would be comfortable killing random people that
Hmm.
aren't haven't done anything to them effectively.
So I think,
Ellie's obviously got history, but
yeah, I think actually the implication there is that because Dina and Joel's relationship in the show is much more explicit, it was barely explored at all in the games. That I think the justification is that Dina's, just as she was on Ellie's side in the council scene, just as she's now gone on this journey with her, I think the implication there is that she's sort of in for a penny, in for a pound. And she's all in. She sees any of them, much like Ellie would probably want to, as we've then seen her do in the TV station. Dina is now more than willing on Joel's behalf to fuck him up. And I think that's potentially where that comes from. That investment, it is different in the show because we've seen her be closer to Joel from the first episode of this season. We've seen their relationship established. That actually is one of the biggest departures this show has done to date. And it was actually, I think, the reason why this became my favourite episode is the very last shot of this episode where Dina held hands with Ellie and said, "We go together." That does not happen in the game at all. Dina stays in the theatre. She's like suffering from morning sickness. She's really unwell. Her agreeing to go with Ellie is a massive departure for the story, a huge change, and it's put me in kind of like, whereas I felt like I'd been in a bit of a privileged position coming into this season, from episode 2 onwards, they've been steadily chipping away at my knowledge of what this story is going to be. And that's actually very exciting for me. So just at that, I'm looking at it from a different perspective there. Certainly as a fan who's played the game, I'm now more enticed by the show because they're making this such a radical change to what...
yeah, so that's really interesting. So the other element, as well as I felt that Dina was a bit too ready to just kill anyone. Not that she's not that's really happened yet, but that as well, I felt like it's interesting. I felt the logical thing would be for her to stay there or get out of Seattle, basically, because Ellie knows that she's pregnant. And it's interesting because the game they probably wrote the fact that she was pregnant, so there was an excuse for her not to go on the thing because you generally
so the
having
player
AI
could be isolated
with you exactly is less intense.
And it became, actually, I remember, not frustrating, I think is too dramatic, but I was disappointed. I wanted to spend more time with Ellie and Dina, and I couldn't.
You know when games do that, there'll be a cutscene with a character, and in your head, you know they're gonna make that character go away because there's no way I'm having help in this next section of the game, and it's annoying when they do that so obviously. I don't know if it came across like that in the game, but it's nice if maybe even it was communicated to them when they did the script for the show, like we did it like this just for like gameplay purposes, and we'd be happy for you to change it, or this is a good thing that you could change.
I think that's really fair. I think it wasn't frustration that she wasn't there. I think that's the wrong emotion, certainly from the game perspective. I think it just felt like such a missed opportunity to explore her character, and much like how I felt the same about us not cutting to Jessie during the dance scene in episode 1 at the New Year's party. I just feel like they have taken it upon themselves to explore the stakes of that, of having Dina go into this world now where you're going to get deeper and deeper into Wolf and Scar territory, that you've got her with you now. I think that's a really interesting change, and it's very exciting. It's going to give every encounter, now that we know that she's pregnant, it's going to give every encounter just that little bit more stakes. Go on.
The show won't work if it's Ellie on her own. There's that you can't make a TV show out of Ellie doing stuff on her own because there's no dialogue until she finds some wolves to talk to. So it like Dina has to be with Ellie. They're just they couldn't. I don't think they could do it another way really, without manufacturing some other people to interact with them. So it is logical. I also think though from like if I was Dina, I would rather be with Ellie than on my own in a theater, because like there's infected everywhere, as we've seen. They've just narrowly escaped by the skin of their teeth in the
And
previous
yeah, and
scene. Like I think it's believable that they would want to stick together.
yes, and they got into that theater very easily. Like that was not a secure location at all. They put a chair in the door. That's what we've seen so far in terms of it being barricaded. So I think it makes total sense for the world of the show. I think it does.
I had a bit of a issue with Seattle being so apparently devoid of infected. Except obviously in the subway, you can understand why they would be in the subway and not above ground, because maybe they've been cleared out. But there's a lot of empty buildings that are completely clear. And I don't know. Seattle's a big place. You'd think there'd be pockets of infected around. I was a bit surprised they didn't come across any sign that there'd been any anywhere. But
I do wonder if we'll see that the more they explore, as they get further in.
Yeah.
And again, the opportunity's there now with them traveling together. I think that's just a really smart choice. And I want to talk about the performances. I want to talk about Bella Ramsey, because I think actually, I feel like the way they've done her styling with her longer hair, she's got the tattoo, she's looking more and more like the Ellie from Part 2, the significantly older character. I think she seemed the most relaxed into her role in this episode. Like, I don't want to take anything away from her. Without Pedro there, she's having to do, again, a lot of heavy lifting. She essentially is now the number one on the call sheet. And I thought it was a really measured, really layered performance, particularly some of her early dialogue. She's smashing it. And again, what a lot to put on a young actor's shoulders. It's basically her and Dina carrying the show at this point. Yeah. We didn't see any Tommy. We didn't see any Jackson at all. I'm looking forward to checking in with those characters. I hope we get a little moment with them before the season is out. I hope that's not the last we see of Jackson in season 2. I would really much like to check in with them and see where they're at. I
mean, obviously I don't know what happens in the game, but it would seem logical to me that Jesse is going to go after Dina, and there's going to be a thing about Ellie and Dina's relationship. Jesse's going to turn up, and it's going to, that kind of writes itself almost. So hopefully we get it from the Jackson perspective.
Yeah, well, I'll speak to that, because now you've said that, I now feel comfortable saying it. A preface from the beginning of this episode, if you haven't... Sorry, we didn't do our spoiler warning. There's a shitload of spoilers in this video. When you go out on your own in the game, Jesse eventually links up with you in the game. And it's you and Jesse traveling for a bit before you get back to the theater and before you get back to Dina. So having you and Ellie be out there now, and then potentially they might go with that Jesse meeting up with you.
There's Ellie, Jesse, and Dina.
In
Seattle.
In the game, it's Ellie. Once Ellie leaves Dina in the theater, Ellie meets up with Jesse later on in Seattle and comes back to the theater. All three of them together at that point. They reunite there. It's likely now we're going to get the three of them together out in Seattle, and that is very cool. That is going to be a lovely point of differentiation, and just giving... It's logical for the in-world choices of the characters in the show. If you just took it for itself, it makes sense for them to link up in that sense. But it also would be a really nice point of departure from the source material as well. So
it's interesting. Like, I would feel like Tommy would feel obligated to go after Ellie because he's in a way has taken over from Joel as her guardian. That obviously she's old enough to look after herself and obviously capable enough, but I feel like if Jesse leaves the settlement, then there's no real reason to check back in with them. And I love Tommy's character, so I'd like to he kind of stays on.
This one I will be a little bit guarded with, because I don't want to spoil if the show does adapt it, but Tommy is definitely, like, he doesn't get written out of the story in part 2. He remains a factor. We've already spent way more time in Jackson and with those characters than we do in the game. So I think it's open season on him, but I'm not confident in being able to speak to that now. Yeah. I feel, where I started this podcast with you for The Last of Us, in the first episode, trying as much as I could, like, publicly, like, I was saying out loud, I didn't want to draw too many comparisons. And then I think I've steadily chipped away at that over these last few episodes. Like, I think inevitably it's had to be factored into the conversation. I can't talk about it and just ignore the fact that I've played the game and I know the source material. So I think but now at this stage, I feel like it's gone the other way. I feel like I've been talking about it, but I'm being surprised by choices that I just didn't expect. And that, I think, is really and truly, if I boil it down, that's actually why I enjoyed this episode so much. And it's why it's my favorite so far, because it has genuinely surprised me in places. And that is a very exciting prospect. Looking ahead.
I think I would just want to say I really liked how they paced it, and that they gave like whatever it was, like 3 minutes of Ellie on the guitar in the shop, like just solid fixed camera basically of her playing the song was really good. And then obviously the theatre scene as well. Not afraid to give time to like important conversations rather than just like falling
blasting
back on
through
action, which exactly. So
they did they let it
done a great job.
They let those scenes hang, and I think that's where, look at them having to be so intimate with each other, the physicality of that scene as well. They looked so comfortable doing that, and they looked like they had genuine chemistry. I think it's great casting as a pair, because chemistry is such a nebulous thing. It's so difficult to identify why actors have it. You certainly can't manufacture it. It's a problem I've seen time and again in shows where you can tell that the actors don't like each other, or they don't have any natural rapport. And these two clearly have a bond, and they clearly got on during filming, and that is coming off the screen. That is translating, and that's again to their credit that they're playing. Bella Ramsey playing the slight physical awkwardness with it, and whereas Isabella said, being very explicit, as Dina stating, she likes boys and girls. She's comfortable with both, and she's demonstrated that. And I think that's to their credit that they were able to explore the nuance of that relationship with comfort and ease and make it seem very natural. And it's the thing that anchors the episode for me, that really roots it. And that's what, again, was just, as a viewer, so exciting to see that play out. We have only 3 more episodes to go of Season 2 of HBO's The Last of Us. Thank you, folks, for tuning in to this latest episode of Absolute Candor. We'll have new episodes going up every single week. You can find us on all of the things: Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Spotify, YouTube, Podbean, at Burly Media, and you can also join our Discord as well, where we have our discussions going on. Please do consider giving us a follow here on YouTube and checking out all of our other content. We very much appreciate any and all support you can give us. Mike, where can people find you?
I'm at thexboxguide.com, and the same on Threads and Blue Sky.
Folks, thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next time.